In the year 1777, the Methodist preachers visited the parish in which the Clarke family resided. Adam went to hear them, and under their preaching, especially under that of Mr. Thomas Barber, his mind became enlightened to see his danger, and he earnestly desired to flee from the wrath to come. His former evil courses were abandoned, his old companions forsaken, and he began to meet in class. After a long night of sorrow, the day of deliverance drew near, and never shall I forget the feeling with which, about 10 years ago, he related this part of his religious experience in a party of friends, among whom were several young persons not decidedly religious, for whose benefit, as he informed me afterward, he then entered so largely into the circumstances that attended his conversion. He described the field to which he went with a conscience heavily burdened with guilt, the spot on which he kneeled and wrestled with God in prayer till his strength was exhausted. The heavens appeared as brass, he found no access to the throne of grace. Concluding that there was no mercy for him, he at last rose in despair, intending to cease the agonizing strife. On retiring from the place, he heard, or thought he heard, a voice which said to him, "Try Jesus." He was not disobedient, but immediately went back to the same spot, there called upon Jesus, and his sorrow was instantly turned into joy. A glow of happiness seemed to thrill through his whole frame, all guilt and condemnation were gone. He examined his conscience and found it no longer a register of sins against God. He looked to heaven, and all was sunshine. He searched for his distress, but could not find it. His heart was light, his physical strength and his animal spirits returned, and he could, more nimbly than ever, bound like a roe. He felt a sudden transition from darkness to light, from guilt and oppressive fear to confidence and peace. He could now draw nigh to God with more confidence than he ever could to his earthly father. He had freedom of access, and he had freedom of speech. With this gladness of soul he also received great intellectual enlargement. He could prosecute his literary studies with much greater ease. He now learned more in one day than formerly he was able to do in 1 month. His mind became enlarged to take in anything useful. He saw that religion was the gate to true learning and science, and soon began, in addition to his other pursuits, to apply himself to astronomy, natural philosophy, and the mathematics. His parents at first designed him for the church, and afterward for the medical profession, but the narrowness of their pecuniary resources presented innumerable obstacles, which they were unable to surmount. It was then concluded that he should become a schoolmaster, but for this he had no inclination. He was at last sent to Mr. Francis Bennet, a linen merchant of Coleraine, a kinsman of his parents, who had proposed to take him on advantageous terms. It should here be mentioned that the subject of this memoir, in his boyhood, had 2 very narrow escapes from sudden death. The one was a severe fall from a horse, when a sack of grain, which he had been unable to balance on the animal, came down with all its force upon him, and, his back happening to come in contact with a pointed stone, he was taken up apparently dead. In about 24 hours he was conveyed home, and in a short time completely restored. His second escape was from being drowned, he having imprudently, in riding for the purpose of washing his father's mare in an armlet of the sea, taken her out of her depth, till they were carried beyond the breakers into the swell, where they were both swamped in a moment. But that God whom waves obey, and who designed him for matters of great and high importance, caused one wave after another to perform for him the genial service of rolling him to the shore before the vital spark was quite extinct. The love of God was no sooner shed abroad in his heart than he felt a yearning pity, a burning charity for his friends and fellow creatures. He not only induced his parents to have family worship on the morning and evening of every day in the week, as well as on the Sabbath, which they had been accustomed to have, but he also consented, though it was a heavy cross, regularly to officiate himself. He, however, had his reward. All his relatives became hearers of the Methodists, and most of them members of society. He then began to exhort his neighbours to turn to God. On the Sabbath he went regularly, in all weathers, a distance of more than 6 miles, to meet a class, which assembled so early that in the winter he had to set out 2 hours before day.